I guess my history of working with troubled people started way back when I was 18 years old. As soon as I got to college and realized I was a troubled person. You know, it takes realization of your own faults to be able to get healing from it. So, but way back when I was 18, of course I'm 52 now, you can do the math, that's a long, long time. But I have probably read 100 books on hurts because I did get serious about the fact that I was a hurt person and I wanted to conquer it. I decided I was really going to work on it, and I have worked on it. And I think that one of the big things I want to start out to saying to all of us is that if you're going to help a troubled person, or if you are a troubled person, you'll work on it the rest of your life. You know, there's no quick fixes. There's nothing that fixes it right away. You know, it just continue working. So, as part of my introduction, I want to give you the main verse that I use in my mind for counseling troubled people is Isaiah 43:4. Isaiah 43:4. And that verse says, "Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore I'll give men for thee and people for thy life." And I tear up when I read that because a lady, when I was 18 years old, a lady read this verse to me and she said, "I am here for you." Now, isn't that neat? See, and it's not, I'm not here for you because I'm special. That lady taught me this. It's not because Loretta Walker's anything special. It's because you are special to God that He gave you somebody, you know, to work with you, to help you. See, one of the great things that great needs that you'll see that hurt people, they have a need of great love, you know. So, we're going to be helping people who have experienced a troubled home. I like the word troubled. I don't use abusive past. I like troubled because it's so inclusive of all different types of hurt. I mean, we're talking about, I'm going to give you 9 different troubled homes that I think about and that I've worked with in these years. Number 1 is verbal abuse. Verbal abuse. That's when people cuss at you. They are ugly to you. They're angry at you. Verbal abuse is, it hurts your self-esteem. It hurts how you think about yourself. Verbal abuse can be anything as light as you coming up to sit down and somebody say, "You can't sit there, that's my seat." You know, as if to tell you, you're not good enough to sit right there, you know. Or verbal abuse could be something light or it could be even worse. Number 2, of course, a troubled home would be a workaholic home. And I didn't realize that a workaholic was caused such a troubled home, except for the fact that children of workaholics feel like they're not important. You know, they always feel like they're second place to the work. So a workaholic is someone that does not know how to show you that you're a priority to them. You know, they don't take time for their children. They're always achieving goals, and in achieving goals, they even look at child rearing as goal achieving, you know. So instead of lovingly nurturing and teach them, they're trying to get them to the next stage so that they can go on with their life and achieve more goals. So a workaholic. Having a workaholic for a parent would be part of a troubled home. Number 3, abandonment. Abandonment. Abandonment is voluntary or involuntary. Abandonment is when voluntary would be when somebody leaves you on purpose. Like my father left our home in 2nd grade. He on purpose left our home. He had other choices and other ways that he wanted to live. So that's what abandonment would be for that. Now, involuntary can cause troubled homes. Involuntary would be when somebody dies. Of course, we are not in control of when we die. But have you ever talked to somebody and say, "My mama died when I was 8 years old, and I've never been the same since"? You know, so involuntary would be when they leave without on purpose. Number 4, perfectionism. Now, I am not a perfectionist. If you talk to my husband, he'd really give you he'd give you definite illustrations of how much I'm not a perfectionist. I'm the kind of person that tries to put round pegs in square holes and square pegs in round holes just to get the job done and go on with my life, you know. I'm not a perfectionist, but I have been around people that are perfectionists. You know, I've known of people that instead of asking them, instead of getting help doing a project, they tell you they're finished the project and they go back and they do it all by themselves just so they can have it done just exactly the way they want. Now, perfectionist If you are a perfectionist, or if you've been raised by perfectionists, you never feel like you can please them. Nothing you do pleases that person. What a frustrating life a troubled person lives if they've never felt like they pleased them. I talked to a lady one time in Alabama. Her mother was still alive, and that lady she was raised by a perfectionist, and she felt like, even as an adult lady with grown children, that she was still trying to please this mother. And she had to get over the fact that she could never please the mother, because the mother can't please herself. You know, that's the thing with perfectionists. They're not happy with themselves, so how could they be happy with you? So perfectionism. Number 5, lack of touch. I never realized how much touch was important. I didn't grow up with touch. I didn't grow up thinking touch was good. We didn't, the only kind of touch I saw as a child was it was vile. It was not a good touch. You know, there was not a lot of huggy and kissy and all that stuff growing up. My mom's not an affectionate person. She's more of a workaholic type person. So when I got into my family, my present family, my husband is very touchy. You know, he still kisses his mother, you know, on the cheek, and you know, they hug a lot, you know, and all that. And so lack of touch, I didn't realize was such a thing. But I guess if you'd look at scriptures, you'd realize that how much God thinks it's important to touch. You know, he let the little children come on to him so they could sit on his lap so he could touch them. So a lack of touch would be another way to have a troubled home. Number 6, parents' lack of love for each other. What if somebody's been raised in a home where the parents didn't know for sure they loved each other, then that gives insecurity to the child, because they never know, is mom and dad going to be friendly toward each other today? Are they going to stay together? They're always wondering, what's family life going to be like? That's one of the reasons why I wrote that book, Possessing Peace, right away. As soon as that was the first book I ever wrote, because I always remember as a child thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a peaceful home? You know, not fussing, not fighting, not, you know, getting on each other and all that. You know, parents' lack of love for each other would be part of a troubled past. Number 7, emotional incest. This is a terminology I learned in these books that I've read. Emotional incest is when you have a role reversal. That's when the child becomes the parent. When a parent starts depending on the child. I'm thinking of a lady that I know that I have counseled with, and her parents split up as a young child, and her mother took on the oldest girl to take care of the family. The mother just fell apart when they split up, and so she became the mother of the family. Now, to this day, she has an overextended sense of responsibility for everything and everybody in their lives. You know, if you ever met anybody that, are you sure I'm not supposed to take care of this? Can I take care? You know, they just feel responsible for everything. You know, if something goes wrong, they feel like it was their responsibility why it went wrong. You know, over-exaggerated sense of responsibility. All these things are just signs that we're in a troubled situation. So, the emotional incest is when you have an extreme role reversal and a child becomes a parent. I remember when I first met Marlene Evans, who was my mentor and one of the ladies that really gave me definite steps toward healing. When I first met her, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, Loretta, you never had a childhood." I never realized I was supposed to have a childhood. I didn't know what a childhood was. One of the things you'll realize about troubled people is they don't know what they're missing. You know, I'm working currently with a lady that she didn't know what being a daughter was all about. You know, those of you that have been raised in a normal family where there's security and you knew your mother loved you and you knew that she cared and she was there for you, you don't really realize what's missing, you know, for all these other people. And it's hard to describe it. So when Mrs. Evans looked at me and she said, "Oh, you never really had a childhood," I sort of looked at her like, "You're crazy. I grew up as I was a child, but I didn't realize what I was missing." So you don't realize the emotional things that you've lost by not having that childhood either. Number 8, negative messages. Negative messages, I think a great sign of meeting somebody that's had a troubled past with negative messages is they hardly ever look you in the eye. They don't feel worthy. They've been told they're stupid, they're dumb, they're fat, whatever it is. You'll never amount to anything. No vision for them at all. And I think one of the things I see in people that won't look you in the eye is the fact that they just don't feel worthy to talk to anybody because they've had these negative messages all life. So that's 8 of the abuses. The 9th one, of course, is one of the ones that we could say is the worst abuse. Don't worry, this is impromptu. We don't care. Come on in. This is not a problem at all. But the last one is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse really demeans your value. Sexual abuse is something that makes you feel like you've been betrayed in a large way. Sexual abuse can be anywhere from inappropriate touch, inappropriate words, like men talking to you in inappropriate ways as a child, to the actual physical rape or whatever. So sexual abuse. Those are the 9 abuses. All right? Now, what I'd like to do is teach you how to help those who have emotional pain. Emotional pain. That's what I wanted. We are going to help people who have emotional pain. In their emotional pain, they have a lack of self-worth. Why would they have a good worth? I have case studies that pop up in my mind every time I talk about somebody. But I think of a lady that was told all of her life that she was a bad girl. I just met this lady in the last year, and I get amazed every time I think about the stories that she told me that her mother, who is a Christian in a Baptist church, she would sit in your church here and look like a very normal person to most everybody. But she zeroed in on, she had 4 children, and she zeroed in on one of those children to abuse them because she came from an abusive background. But she told the girl, "You're ugly, you're stupid, you'll never amount to anything." She grew up from little. She watched a horrible movie as a child. I won't tell you the name of it because I'm trying to protect the identity of that person, because she could be known in some circles very well. But she was shown a terrible movie, something like Sybil. You know what a Sybil is? It's not that movie, but it's a Sybil is a movie of a girl with multiple personalities, and she was evil. Had a lot of evil in her. And they watched that movie, and then when the movie was over, they told this girl that she was like that little girl. My mind can't comprehend that. Can it comprehend? Can you comprehend it? No. Why would they have a self-worth? Self-worth is knowing the value of yourself. We're going to delve into that Wednesday. But so we're going to help people to have a lack of self-worth. We're going to help people with a lack of intimacy with others. If you've known people that sort of keep you at a distance, they have a certain area around them, their space. And they keep you outside of that space on purpose because they don't want you to get too close. They're afraid for you to get to know them. Again, it goes back to the lack of self-worth, because they don't feel like they're worthy of anybody knowing them. Number one. Number two is they don't want you to get too close to them because they're afraid of intimacy. How can you be a good wife without knowing how to be intimate? How could you? You can't. When you look around, Miss Sharon, as much as you counsel people, when somebody's not a good wife, it's most of the reason is because they're not an intimate person, but they don't know how to be intimate. You grow up learning that as a child. So a lack of intimacy with others, a lack of intimacy with God. One of the major things that I have thought of in my life as I've tried to help troubled people is the whole crux of it is you've got to get them to be close to God. And that takes, we want to get them to the root problem. See, all these things that I've mentioned, keeping a distance, all the things that we've talked about, and there again on Wednesday we're going to go into more detail of those things, but all of those things are the surface problems. The root problem is how they feel about themselves. And how they feel about themselves has been influenced by the people in their lives, right? So we're going to get to the root problem. My advice, specifically for those of you that are sitting here that are going to counsel people. Number one is counseling shouldn't interfere with your priorities. When you start working with troubled people, they'll try to take your time. They'll try to call you all the time. They'll try to make you feel, and if they don't, you're all looking around at each other like, oh, we know somebody. That's fine. You know, that and it's very true. You know, I want you to be able to talk and laugh. Don't worry about this recording. This is, be real. But they will try to take your time. As a matter of fact, God let me, 2 weeks ago, I was in a church, and God brought this girl back into my life that I had counseled when I was in my late 20s. And I remember that girl. I didn't know this in my late 20s. I remember this girl would call me and she said, I feel like killing myself. Well, when somebody says something like that to you, you think, oh, I've got to give her my time right now. Isn't that how you feel? They give you this urgency, like, if you don't help me, you're my only hope. Does that build you and make you feel like I am special? I am somebody, nobody else could help this person. I've got to do this, So that sort of poisons you and makes you feel like you're a dog if you don't help them. But God brought this person back in my life. And do you know what this girl did to me? She wrote a note. Did not sign it, left it on my book table, said, I have a head knowledge, not a heart knowledge. Now, what that was supposed to be to me, what she left that note there for me, I knew who it was because I'd seen her the night before, and I knew she was back at the revival the next night. As soon as I saw the note, I knew who it was. Because I knew that was another ploy of this hurt person that wanted my attention. What she wanted me to do is say, what do you mean you still just have a head knowledge and not a heart knowledge? We got to make sure you're saved. You know what? She wanted me to get into that with her, but you know what? I said, email me sometime and we'll talk about it. She hasn't emailed me yet, 2 weeks ago. They just want your urgent attention. These hurt people will rob you of your priorities. So anytime I am counseling somebody, I tell them, I tell them, now, I'm a wife and a mother first. See, you're teaching them what priorities are too. Because see, they didn't grow up with priorities. They weren't a priority to anybody. So they don't really comprehend them. So you teach them that. You say, now I'm going to give you this amount of time. And I even warn them. I say, I've got my watch and I watch my watch. And if I look at my watch, that's not because you're not important. It's because I've got to keep on my schedule because my family's a priority. You will do them a great injustice if you allow them to just take your time whenever they call and need it. A lot of times in counseling, I find that when somebody's in one of their urgent moods where they want to kill themselves, or I'm just so desperate and I'm so depressed and I just feel like I'm going to die if somebody doesn't help me right now, you give them a Bible assignment. Okay, I'm so sorry you're feeling this. I don't make them feel like they're stupid. I do feel like they're stupid. Anybody puts that pressure on me, I just want to say, hey, back off. I don't like, you're getting in my space, right there. But I don't say that to them. But I would look him in the eye and I'd on the phone very conscientiously, I'd say, you know what, I understand this is a priority time for you. This is a very important time for you, but I cannot give you the time right now. What about one of those Bible verses that we talked about? Have you read your Bible? And get them in the Word of God. See, we're trying to enhance their relationship with God. That's how you can help them the most. So you teach them right away. You teach them right away that you're not available 24/7. There is nobody in our lives available 24/7 except for God. That's what you got to teach them. And they don't want God because they think, I had a lady tell me one time, but I want a Jesus with skin on. And I thought, oh, Jesus with skin on? That's unreasonable. They're expressing their needs in such a way that a human being cannot fulfill it. I can't fulfill those kind of needs. So, biblical principles, biblical counseling, you have to keep your priorities. The second part of my advice is legally, and this is from Dr. Gibbs. As I've written articles, I have gotten some legal counsel about this. Legally, you can only say, this helped me, or someone told me. You can't say, point blank, you got to do this, or you do this, or this helped me. I did this. The more you can give credit to somebody out there in la la land, the better off you'll be legally. Because I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody getting into a situation where somebody killed themselves and they brought back an accusation against a counselor, but I just always try to protect myself. Third thing is, main goal of counseling should be to put their hands in God's hands. In God's. See, I am trying to help them to have the kind of close relationship to God that I have with God. Because my answers come from God. And remember, I wasn't a touchy-feely person. Now it doesn't bother me to come up and hold somebody's hand like that. 30 years ago, I was very uncomfortable. I mean, have you ever shook hands with somebody and they sort of act like, you got dirty hands or something? You just barely touch them and they're like, ooh, something's wrong. Well, that's sort of what I was like. But now, I want to put their hand in God's hand. I want them to be so close to Him that they will understand God, because God has all their answers. So, main goal of counseling should be put their hand in God's. When you put their hand in God's, then the first thing you do is you check on their salvation. First time I talk with somebody, I'd always check on their salvation. Then the second thing I do is I always check with their walk. And most people do not have a walk that are troubled people. And the reason why they don't have a walk is because they don't want to be intimate with anybody. They're not comfortable with intimacy. So I check on the walk. And you know what part of the walk is? Is the Bible. They got to have a time reading their Bible. Isaiah 40 verse 8, the grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. It's the very thing that will help them the most, but they refuse to go by it. They refuse to use it in any way. So your big goal should be to make sure that you give them a relationship with God. Okay? Then, next thing I do, give the person assignments and see if they mean business. I'm minded of a girl that emailed me from Mississippi. And another lady in a church that I know put me in contact with her because she thought maybe I could help her. Well, when she emailed me, what I do is I give them assignments to do. And when she emails me back, oh, this is going wrong and this is going wrong, and I said, well, did you do your assignment? And she said, no. And then you know what I did? I wrote back her, I said, I don't mind listening to you, but my life I'm in the mode of trying to help people. And helping people means you do what I ask you to do. If you will not take the time to do what I ask you to do, then I will not take the time to listen to you. That seems kind of hard, doesn't it? But you are important people. Those of you sitting here, you have husbands, most of you. You have children. You have lots of responsibilities in your church. Maybe you have a job of some sort. So you realize that your importance, and you realize that if somebody does not have the character to make themselves do what they need to do to get help, then I'd stop counseling. Teenagers are very famous for this. They just want to go and blow. I've got a teenager that I'm talking to right now on the emailing, and everything, and I keep saying the same thing. Go do this. And, if she don't do it, then go do this. And she hasn't done it yet. I've been talking to her like 6. I don't spend a lot of time. It's one-liners. Go do this. And if she hasn't done it, go do this. Have you done that yet? No. I just keep telling her the same thing, because if she's not going to do it, then I'm not going to try to help her in any other way. There's no use to it. Then the last thing is set the atmosphere for counseling. Set the atmosphere for counseling. Give them the guidelines right off the very beginning. Give them the guidelines. I have my own list of priorities. I will give you this amount of time in a week's time, and that's all that I can give you. If you happen to call me or text me or anything like that, I might respond, I might not, depending on what my schedule's like. But you have to understand, and you have to teach them that your family is your first priority. As a lady, I was talking to a lady that counsels people, and her husband was home for a day off. And she said, my husband was just amazed all the people that came through her house. Now, she has time. That's all she does. Counsel people, which is fine. But we've got to teach these people what our priority is. Our priority is give them the guidelines right off the bat. And if they go beyond the guidelines and expect more from you than what your guidelines were set up, you say, remember when we first met? And I'm always kind, because I don't want to be harsh, like they're, I don't want to abuse them by being ugly to them. I told you already what to do. I don't try to be that. I say, remember our guidelines that we set up? Well, that's all I can give you. In some situations when a preacher will ask me to counsel somebody, if I'm there for a meeting, I'll set up 3 times that I'll talk to that person, 2-hour increments. And if the person tries to contact me outside of those 2 hours, I might answer them, I might not, depending on what my schedule's like. But that's what you have to do. And it's not because I'm some big counselor and I'm so great. It's because I have other responsibilities in life. And plus, it's not really good for them to do that. Number 2 is eliminate distractions. Number 2 would be to eliminate distractions. So you set the atmosphere by, number 1, give them the guidelines. Number 2 is you eliminate the distractions. Then after you eliminate the distractions, then you prevent interruptions. Prevent interruptions. Whatever you can do, put a sign out, tell your family, can I have this hour, turn your phone off, whatever you can do. You know, if you say I'm going to give you this hour, then give them the hour, you know, as best you can. Number 4 is have drinks and tissues available. You know, there's something about fellowship of drinking and eating together that sort of loosens you up, doesn't it? You know, so you have drinks available. I'm talking about the good drinks, you know, water, pop, Diet Coke for me, but coffee, whatever. But I'm not. We have to eliminate the interruptions, but have drinks and tissues available. Number 5, and this is really an important one to me, is smile a lot. You know, smile with not just your mouth but your eyes, because they're not used to love. So you smile a lot and you look at them. Then the next, number 6, is nod your head to give assurance. Give guidelines. Number 2, eliminate distractions. Number 3, prevent interruptions. Number 4, have drinks and tissues available. Number 5, smile a lot. Number 6, nod your head to give reassurance. When somebody's bearing their heart and you're sitting there stone-faced, it's like, what is she thinking? Does she really care about me? You know, so that's why you have to do that. See, there's so much of us as counselors that we're trying to help them. Number 7, sit at a 90-degree angle. I was taught, one of my books taught me this, that if I sit at a 90-degree angle, they're right there. I don't want to sit right next to them, because then you're looking sideways. So if you sit at a 90-degree angle, then you can look at each other. It's a comfortable way to look at each other. It gives a little space for those that need the space. But a 90-degree angle. Now, oftentimes, though, in my situation, I can't bring them into my motorhome. You know, if at all possible, I would not bring a person into your home. It's hard to get them back out. You know, if you're going to counsel somebody, counsel them away from your home. Somewhere where you can say, well, I got to go, you know. Because if you bring them in your home, you can't push them out the door. Okay, it's time for you to leave, you know. They'll keep finding things to tell you and things to help you with. But anyway, that they want help with, I mean. So if I do go out to eat, we find a restaurant that has the high, you know, the high boost, like Panera. Panera Bread's been a favorite place for me. And a table right there. And if you do have a table between you and that person, lean into it like this. You know what this does? Your interest, by leaning over, says, I really care about you. We're trying to establish some very deep things in a quick way to give them the help they need right away. So lean into it. That's what I do when there's a table there. Number 8, you're going to think I'm weird on this one, just to warn you. If it is a very abusive situation, I will talk in low lighting. Like take, for instance, in a car, I would go out at night and sit in a car. And we both have to turn, and I'd say, can you turn your back against that window, and I'll turn my back against this one, and we look at each other straight forward. That gives that space that she might need. When I say abusive situation, I'm talking about sexual abuse. Most of the time, if I want to get into what has happened to them, if they've never told their story, they have to tell their story once. We'll learn all those things later. But so I get into low lighting. Can I say this to you, moms? I do this with my children too. Saturday night, I got up everybody was asleep in the motorhome. My 17-year-old is not a talker. You have a kid that's not a talker? And I got up at 11:30. I took a little nap. I'm so glad I'm able to do this. I took a little nap. I dozed off, then I woke up and I thought, oh, it's 11:30. And everybody was asleep but Joe and I. Because Joe doesn't go to sleep. He lays there and reads books. You know, he just can't go to sleep early. He's one of those night owls. So I laid down on the bed next to him and I said, what you been thinking? You know, and I just started talking like that. But the lights were low. and that somehow people feel like they can tell you more when they can't see your face and your reaction. So, very low lighting. Then the ninth and last one for setting the atmosphere is I ask questions that require more than a yes or no. I ask questions that require more than a yes or no. You know, like what I asked to Joe would be a great example. You know, how's things been going for you? You know, do you think my relationship's good right now? Have I done anything recently to you, you know, that you could tell me about that I need to be more careful about, you know? And we talk like that, you know, because we're trying to get him to be more open with us. So ask questions more than a yes or no. Now, I'm going to give you a chance. Anybody have questions concerning that, what we just did, that 30-minute session? Another handout to give you that I want to send home with you. See, what I figure will happen is you'll take these thoughts and you'll transfer them to somebody else. And I want to give you a handout to give them. Now, in some situations, you might be sitting here and we're trying to talk like everybody's a counselor, but you might be somebody that has a troubled past. You know, do you know out of those 9 things, 6 of them, me, I've experienced 6 of those 9 abuses that I listed. So, so I have an assignment here. If you don't mind passing them out, we've got a couple minutes left. I want to make sure that, can I have one? I'm going to go over it with you just a little bit quickly to try to explain this to you. But what this is using the Bible. Remember, the Word of God is the thing that will last forever. So we want to give them the Word of God. In my 30 years, I have always, when I was working on this has been my style, I guess, you know, and I'm supposed to be teaching you what I do, is I've always, when I'm working on something in my life, I always memorize a verse to help me overcome it. You know, that's what I do. I memorize a verse to help me overcome it. So that's why I said how to be teachable and memorize one of these verses, you know, and maybe you'd have the person you're counseling memorize one of them. Then we get into the part where you're trying to help them reveal what's going on in your mind. I think when I was here last time we did our Bible study, for those of you that weren't there, I taught about the brain and how there's a conscious side and a subconscious side. Those that have been through troubled pasts, they store everything in their subconscious mind. And in their subconscious mind, there's memories that they have to dig up in order to get healing from it. That's why it's good for them to tell their story to one person. You know, they don't go around telling everybody everything. That's not good, because you are very vulnerable to too many people. So I've got all these questions here that you have them write out and make them write. They say, oh, then I'm not a writer. Then I can't help you if you're not a writer. I'm not saying you have to write complete sentences. I'm not saying you have to say everything and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody but you, but you've got to write it down. Journaling is one of the great tools of overcoming troubled past. Describe your relationships during childhood. Father, mother, grandparents, siblings, peers before school. If they can remember anything before school, before they're 5 years old, or kindergarten. Peers in grade school, peers in high school. Remind yourself of what you dread during your childhood. You know, emotionally, we're digging up in emotionally what's going on in their minds and in their hearts. So remind yourself what you dreaded during high school. During any part of your childhood, I mean. Remind yourself what did you anticipate during your childhood. For me, I'll just tell you, what I wrote down right there when I did this is when there was any time there was peace in the home. We didn't even have peace during holidays. It took me years to like Christmas and Thanksgiving, you know, because they were just usually hubbubs. You know, alcohol flows greatly during holidays in troubled homes. So holidays were not anything I really liked. So anytime there was peace. Then recall specific instances of discipline. Now your mind will always remember the negatives. You can't help it when you're a troubled person. But you want to encourage them to be honest with themselves. Affection. You know, loss. Any kind of loss they had. Gain. Shame. Things that they're ashamed of. These things are not necessarily things they will show you unless they want to. They do need to write it down, and if they'll write it down and hide it somewhere, and put it in a trusted place where nobody would ever read it unless they ask them, that's really important. hard-headed woman. Last year, when I had my neck surgery, what I have found about myself is when I'm not well, and when I am very, very tired, I always revert back to my true identity. You know what I mean by true identity? The real, it's like somebody says to you, well, the real Loretta Haynes, please come forward. And she came out last year. And after I had this neck surgery, you see I got a little scar right here, I told the doctor was so thrilled with that little scar, but I said, I wish the scar was showing more. And he said, he didn't know how to take me. I could tell a lot that he didn't know how to take me. And he said, why is that? And I said, because then people would know I really went through something. And I said, this is hardly noticeable, I want to be able to show my battle wounds, But anyway, when I had this neck problem, I had neuropathy. Do you know what neuropathy is? Where your arm, it's numb, but yet it hurts. I was here when all that was going on. It had started May 1st, and I was here the 1st of June. And I had to keep my arm up like this all the time. It was just pretty confining. But as I was in that kind of a situation, let me just tell you, the real me came out. And I was shocked all over again about what the real me is really like. You know what I mean? After I had my surgery, a friend of mine from Maine came down to stay with me for the week because all my family's doing vacation Bible schools. My son KW was in a camp in Maryland, and they all were in North Carolina doing vacation Bible schools, and I didn't want to be here. It would have made me very nervous to be around all that action doing the vacation Bible schools, and I know I needed to lay back and rest, I'd felt very guilty just laying around watching them work. So I stayed up in our house in Indiana while I didn't have anybody stay with me, and so this friend of mine, that's a pastor's wife, she flew in to stay with me, and she didn't know that Loretta Haynes either. You know what I mean? She didn't know that side of me. I don't know if I recognized her too well, but as I saw this unfold, I thought, this is what I could have been like had I not got under the right influences. And so I'm going to teach you something about being a hard-headed woman. The definition, of course, is stubborn, unyielding, arrogant, and proud. The Bible word for being a hard-headed woman is stiff-necked. That's what the Bible word is. The phrase, a stiff-necked people, is a figure of speech for rebellion and disobedience taken from stubborn domestic animals, such as oxen, that turn their shoulders away from the yoke and refuse to follow directions. The verses I'd like to read you. Nehemiah 9:16. If you'll just write the references down, you can look them up later on. Nehemiah 9:16. But they and our fathers dealt proudly and hardened their necks and hearkened not to thy commandments. They hardened their necks and hearkened not unto my commandments. Proverbs 1:24 and 25. Because I have called and ye refused, I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded, but ye have set it at naught all my counsel and would none of my reproof. One of the things I'm seeing, a pattern when I started studying this out about myself, is they're not teachable. Stiff-necked people are not teachable. Let me just ask you this. Are these troubled people that you're trying to help, are they really teachable? Are they so stuck in their own thinking and their own ways that they're not willing to branch out? See, when Mrs. Evans said that to me, when she said, you didn't have a childhood, in my mind I thought, I had a childhood. I was a child. I remember reading this book, doing this, and I'm watching television. I remember that. But I said, well, teach me what you mean by that. And I let her teach me, and I started opening up to that explanation of what she felt was not a childhood. See, I was teachable enough to learn. See, and you'll learn more what a stiff-necked person is, but in Proverbs 29:1, he that being often reproved hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. You reprove them. These people that you're trying to counsel, you talk to them. Those of you that are here in your troubled past, let me ask you this. How teachable are you? When a counselor tells you something, do you argue with them in your mind? If you don't say it out loud, do you argue with them in your mind? Well, she said it this way, but really, I don't think I'm like that. One of my friends, I have some relationships where we're peers and we're friends, but we can correct each other. It's pretty fun to be that way. One of my friends called me recently, and while she was talking, I said, you know how we can always and I always ask for permission to correct her, because I don't want, and she does the same for me. And I said, is this one of those times I can tell you something I see? And she said, yes. And so She was in a work situation at her job. Her boss had gotten moved to a different situation. But she had never felt like she really connected with that boss. She felt let down that she didn't connect with that person and wasn't what she should have been to that person. And the boss had just moved recently, and she's still talking about how I didn't connect and I didn't do this and what I need to do. And I said, you feel like it's your responsibility to make peace with everybody, don't you? And she went, and she just chewed on it for a few minutes. When you give rebuke or reprove somebody, you got to let them have a little time to digest it, And so she said, huh, when you put it that way, it really makes sense. I do. I said, have you biblically, go back to the Bible. Have you biblically done everything that you should do? Given presents. I've worked with her on this relationship with this person. Have you given presents in secret? Yes. Have you written notes to let that person know the things you admire about them? When that person got moved to a different area, did you write them a note and say this? So you've done everything biblically that you can do to have a relationship or have connected with that person. So it's really not in your hands anymore. Isn't that true? All of us, we women are such fixers that we hardly can stand it when some relationship's not right. We try to fix things that are not fixable. We'll learn more about that Thursday. But anyway, then another verse, and I hope you get as shocked about this verse as I did, because when I read this verse and studied it out, I just sort of went, like this. Psalm 95:8, and in the New Testament, the same thing is said in Hebrews 3:8. Now we think Paul wrote the book of Hebrews, so I don't know if he went back to Psalms and saw it and what else, or if the Holy Spirit just said, this needs to be re-emphasized, so please say it here. The Bible says there, harden not your heart, as in the provocation, as in the day of temptation in the wilderness. Now, do you know what the provocation is? I studied it out in the Greek and the Hebrew. Do you know what provocation means? You're not going to like this. I didn't like it because it made me remember things that I've done to my husband. Do you know what? It's the day you wear down God. You argue with him. Can you believe that? Have you ever argued with your husband? My hand's up. I have to be honest. But honey, what about this? And as in the day of provocation. Now, sometimes I'm such a good Christian, I don't argue out loud. But when you say it to me, I think, that is the stupidest thing I ever heard of. Why did you think that? You know what I'm saying? So I argue in my mind, but I don't say it out loud. But isn't that something? But that's what God says. Harden not your heart, as in the day when we argue. If you get into counseling someone and they argue a lot, they're stiff-necked, I just wash my hands of them. Wipe your feet off and go away, because they're not going to learn. I'd like to protect your time, and say, come back to me when you're ready to listen to me. I mean, really listen. Hebrews 3:15, while it is said, today if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation. He said it again. So all these things are to tell you that we don't need to be hard-headed women. Being hard-headed means we have a lack of self-control, which lowers the value of ourselves. And then we have less energy to discipline our attitudes, appearance, and actions. So being hard-headed means we have a lack of self-control, which lowers the value of ourselves, and then we have less energy to discipline our attitudes, appearance, and actions. That means we're just not teachable. I'm not going to let anybody teach me about this. Boy, if you could have seen me when I went off to college. I'm from West Virginia. Dressing's not your thing when you're from West Virginia. I don't know if any of you ladies can relate to this, but, I didn't fix my hair. If I did, I put those rollers in it that made the hoops, that had waves, all there. If I thought I was supposed to roll my hair, that was in the 80s, but still, curling irons were out, but I didn't want to take the time to curling iron. I'd put the rollers in, suffer in bed all night with those hard rollers rather than do that. But if I thought I was supposed to, I didn't know anything about dressing. Didn't know anything about appearance, And I started noticing all these cool-looking girls in college. And I knew I did not fit in. I had polyester clothes. Even back then, polyester wasn't in. I was still back in the 70s. You know what I mean? I'm just telling you, it was hard. But if I wanted to change, I had to be teachable. You know, I've had to just make myself learn from everybody I come in contact with. I have to ask people questions. So, number one, why are we not teachable? Number one, because we feel like we have to prove ourselves. We have to prove ourselves. Anybody that's from a troubled home, remember, their values are not what it should be. Their self-worth's not, so they've got to prove who they are. Do you know what I find sometimes when I do argue with my husband? Out loud, I do. I'm sorry to tell you the truth about myself. I'm trying to prove that I'm not some stupid woman that he can just boss around. Isn't that silly? He's supposed to boss me around. I'm supposed to let him lead me. You know, which means I'm supposed to be teachable by him. Many times I have had to tell myself, now if this was Mrs. Evans, would you do what he said without question? Yes. Then I just shut up. You know, I've got little things that I tell myself, you know, to get myself under control. Now it's with Mrs. Scott. Now if Mrs. Scott was here and she asked you to do this, would you argue with her? Nope. Then shut up, Loretta. You know, I just tell myself shut up. So I've cut back a lot. But I feel like I have to prove myself. When I was laying in the hospital, I remember, this is so fun. When they took me back, you know how when they're prepping you for surgery, you know, you have to wash your hair and you have to put all this stuff. Well, you don't go to the hospital with makeup on. You know, there's nothing. Nothing. You are what you are. Laying there in the hospital. A pastor from the area, I had the operation in a different town than when I'm from, but they knew it, and somehow they found out about us. Oh, I know how, because the assistant pastor went and got Kevin from the airport because he came in for my surgery. So the pastor came in at 7 in the morning there and saw me with all my glory, you know, no hair. You know, when I just wash my hair and it's real flat. You can tell I'm not a beautiful person when it's just flat, you know. At least I don't feel like I am. And then, so I'm laying there, my hair's flat, you know, and no makeup and a white gown, which I don't know if y'all know the color things. How many of you studied the color things about your appearance? And you know, I'm pretty religious about the colors. You know, it's got to be a religion for me. But I pretty much stay by what colors look good on me because I know it really makes me look good, you know. But anyway, so I'm laying there in a white gown. I'm thinking, oh boy, you know, this is, here I am in all my glory. So they roll me into this surgery room and they started giving me the stuff to put me out. And all the lights were on me, and I was talking out of my head, I'm sure, but I said to all the people standing around me that are getting ready to do their thing on me, I said, boy, I feel like a movie star here with all these hot lights on me, you know, and they said, yeah, sure, lady. You know, that's what they said. I remember saying, yeah, that's sure, lady. Whatever, float your boat, you know. You know, but I just feel like I got to prove myself. Whenever we put things away in the trailer. Now, my husband is more of a perfectionist than I am. My mother-in-law tells me that I've ruined him. Isn't that a great thing? Because he used to be more of a perfectionist, but he's balanced himself out, you know. And living with me, he'd have no choice because he has to put up with so much, you know. Sometimes I just cringe when I tear things up and break it, and he looks at me like, did you really do that? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I couldn't help it, you know. And being married 30 years, he has been so nice about it, you know, now. 20 years ago, it wasn't that nice, you know, and I don't blame him. But anyway, proving yourself. Have you ever thought you got to prove who you are? And, you know, well, when we put away the games, the game frames, you'll see them, those of you that are coming to the carnival Thursday, we have these metal game frames. They have to go in, the legs go in and down, and then the next one comes, the legs go out and up. You know, there's a system to it. Everything fits just perfectly inside of each other. And my husband has taught me what he likes. And I really do try to please him. You know, with all that's within my power, I try to do it the way he wants. But I can't even tell you all the times. He'll come up after we've got all the games plugged in, and he'll say, there's a gap back at the back of these game frames. You know, I'm supposed to kick them in real tight, you know, like this. And you know what I want to say? Well, why don't you put them away next time? You're all laughing. You know what Miss Evans said? When women laugh, they relate to what you're saying. It's like saying amen, you know. But anyway, so you know, that's what. But I said, oh, I'm sorry. You know, I tried. You know, we put this big strap around it, you know, like this after we put them in. Well, you know, he's taught me all this stuff how he wants to do these frames. Well, last year, what I shouldn't have done is tried to help with any carnivals last year because I was sick, and I was not in my right mind. I really wasn't in my right mind. I was taking all these medicines, those of you that are in pain all the time and take those medicines, God bless you. You ought to just wear duct tape over your mouth all the time. You know what I'm saying? Because you think really far out things, and you get relaxed. The muscle relaxes to the point where you say, I can say whatever I want, and it's okay. So we're putting these games away, and I just went through this little spiel because men help me, and I try to act real. About you, I try to act like I don't know what I'm doing. Act like I do. Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying. So I'm trying to put these game frames away, and I just went through this big spiel with these guys about how we have to do it this way and all this. Do you know what happened? We got about half the frames in. No, it really happened. And my husband came up, and he looked at the frames, and he said, I don't want you to put them in like that. Now, I just went through all this big deal with these men, that this is how we're going to do it, and this is the way you've got to make him happy, and then he changes right in the midst of it. What did you want to do when somebody changes right in the midst of it? After you're trying to do it to please them anyway, right? So, now, when the men were around, I controlled it. Even with medicines, I controlled it. But after the men were not around, I went over to him and I said, what do you mean I'm not doing it the way you want to do it? I've been doing it this way for 5 years. Why all of a sudden do we have to change how I'm doing it? I just really gave him what for. The day of provocation came. But you know what, really, would you like me to be honest with you? The whole issue was not having to redo those half. That didn't take long. The issue was my pride. I'm trying to prove to these men that I know what I'm doing. I'm not some stupid little redhead, blonde, whatever it is at that time of season. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they got to prove themselves. Number two, that's not fair. They have pity parties. Pity parties are only fun for the person that's having it. If you're having a pity party and other people are around, nobody enjoys being around you when you're having your pity party. For instance, when I came home from the hospital, these are all true illustrations. I wish they weren't, but they're true. When I came home from the hospital, the air conditioning in our house, my husband flew in to be there for me with the surgery, and he brought me home from the hospital the same day. We didn't have insurance, so I didn't stay but just a few hours there. As soon as I woke up, I said, I got to wake myself up. I got to get out of here, And so I started pinching myself and all that. So I got out of there pretty quickly. And I didn't really have pain, but I couldn't breathe. I had labored breathing, which if you know anything about health, air conditioning helps labored breathing. So when I got home, the air conditioning was out of my house. So my husband's got these men in his phone to call to fix our air conditioning. They're all brothers. Do you know what I mean by brothers? They're from our church. And we've had them in, and we don't ask them to do it for free. We pay them. We don't even ask for a deal. We just say, fix it, We're not that kind of people. So one of them came, and the air conditioning unit's up in the attic, and he said, oh, it's way too hot for me to go up there today. I'll have to come back. I'll have to come back on Monday and do that. And I thought, he doesn't realize how much I need this air. So I laid back in the recliner, and I said, oh, brother, and I'm not going to tell you his name. Oh, brother, but you don't understand. I just had the surgery, and I really need, I need help being able to breathe better. So could you please stay and get this fixed? He didn't stay. He left. Can you believe that? So Kevin calls another brother, an air conditioning man in our church that we had used before. This was Friday night. That one came. So he said, maybe I should try somebody. So he got this other guy to come in. And the other guy came in. When he came in, I said, you know what? I got to get really my actress skills in because I got to make sure he gets it fixed today. Because Kevin was leaving, and I knew, I had fans blowing on me, but it really wasn't helping me like I knew it would if I had the air conditioning. So I went out and I messed up my hair. I really wanted to look sick. I laid back in the chair. I covered myself over with a white sheet. Remember? No color. A white sheet. I just laid there like that, and I said, and when this guy came in, I said, oh, brother, if you could just get me some air conditioning. I just had surgery yesterday, and and Kevin would explain, then I'd jump in there. Oh, it'd be such a blessing to me. I wish you could help me. I kept jumping in like that. That guy didn't fix it. Too hot. He wanted to wait and come back Monday. I was so mad after that guy, because that guy came in after Kevin left to go to the airport. I called and left a message on Kevin's phone. Kevin, please take those men's name out of your phone. I never want to call them again in my life. I called them right that same day because I was so mad at those men for not fixing my air conditioning, right? You know what happened? This January, this is revenge, sweet revenge. I was fixing Kevin's phone. I was going through, he had 1,500 contacts on his phone, and he really only had 500 contacts, but changing phones for 6 years, every 2 years, he had accumulated all these different names. So when I got, Kevin doesn't know it yet, don't tell him. When I got to those two guys' names, you're right, I deleted them. I said, we'll never call them again. We got new air conditioning men that really will fix it. But what my problem was? I was sitting there having a pity party. I was feeling sorry for myself because I needed air conditioning. I wanted somebody to care. And that nobody was going to care. It wasn't that big of a deal. When they got there and fixed it Monday morning, it took them less than 10